Welcome. I'm Cindy Edwards, Chairman of the Jacksonville Onslow Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. And on behalf of the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee, I want to thank you for joining us for this forum, Onslow. The Governmental Affairs Committee works with government agencies on issues that impact our business community. We monitor legislative issues that impact local businesses, promote collaborative partnerships between business, government, military, and education sectors. We also prevent forums, like this one, to create awareness on topics which are important to our entire community. I'd like to thank our media sponsor, the Daily News, and the City of Jacksonville for the use of these facilities, and the City of Jacksonville Media Services for broadcasting this important forum. I'd also like to thank our candidates for North Carolina House of Representatives for being with us here today. Our system of government only works when quality individuals give of their time to serve the residents of Jacksonville and Onslow County. Our corporate sponsor today is Duke Energy, and at this time, I would like to introduce Millie Chalk, Duke Energy's District Manager for Government and Community Relations. Thank you.
Good afternoon. And on behalf of Duke Energy, welcome to Forum Onslow. Duke Energy is proud to partner with the Jacksonville Onslow Chamber of Commerce in sponsoring this forum focused on candidates running for the North Carolina House of Representatives. In this turbulent and uncertain world that we live in, we recognize that voting is a privilege, and being an informed voter is our responsibility. I look forward to an informational session as our candidates outline their priorities for our state and our region. Duke Energy has a proud tradition of leadership and engagement in our communities and is proud to sponsor Forum Onslow. Now on to our candidates.
Okay, well, welcome candidates and audience. My name is Elliott Potter. I am currently a talk show host on Thunder Country 96.3. And for quite a few years, I worked over at the Daily News, so maybe, and I've done a few of these forums, and we pretty much use the same rules all the time, but I'm gonna go over them for you, and hope that you guys will behave, and I believe you will. Today we're doing a forum for the candidates for the State House. Yeah, Onslow County currently elects representatives in 3 State House districts, District 14, District 15, and District 4. We also elect a state senator from Senate District 6. On the May ballot, there's a Republican primary in District 14, which is wholly in Onslow County, and those are the candidates here for the forum today. For voters in a few Onslow precincts in District 4, there will also be Democratic and Republican primaries in May. Democrats in District 4 will choose between Daquan Love and William Van III, while Republicans will nominate either James Dixon, or Nathan Riggs. There are no contested primaries for House District 15 and Senate District 6. With both parties, though, fielding candidates for the general election, the Chamber will hold forums for all 3 State House districts and the State Senate before the November vote. So we're here today with the Republican candidates for District 14. And we hope that we can make this both an informative and enjoyable evening. This is the Chamber's forum, but it's also become, as all of us know, it's been around for a while, so it's the people's forum over the years. As in previous election cycles, the public has had various opportunities to participate, and some are even bringing us questions today. So we'll try to work as many of those in as we can. We've also had questions that have been collected from members of the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee, which brings this program together. We're going to try to continue with the format that allows, as I explained to the candidates earlier, opportunity for rebuttal. And because we are dealing with a smaller group of candidates, hey, there are only 2 of you, we're going to give you a little bit more time for your responses today. Each candidate will now have a maximum of 90 seconds to answer your questions. You don't have to take the whole time, but if you can adequately answer the question in a shorter period, do so. We will also rotate the order of questions. At the end of each full round of questions, when both of you have answered, candidates will also have a chance to offer a rebuttal. You have rebuttal cards in front of you, you have 3 opportunities for rebuttals. Again, you don't have to use them all. If you would just hold your rebuttal card up, you would get an additional 1 minute in which you can maybe respond to a point of the other candidate, or you can expand on your own answer. In the interest of time, you're limited to 3, so raise your cards wisely. At the end, we'll have summations, and you each will have 90 seconds, the same as you will have for your questions for those summations. We would remind you that this is a forum and not a debate. We ask that you address the audience and not each other. We also ask that you adhere to the time limit. You will see a yellow light flash when you have 30 seconds to end your response. When you see the red light and you hear a buzzer, what I ask is that you just stop the sentence that you're on and that will end that particular answer. So that's all I got in way of preparation. You will have 2 minutes for the first introductory question. Any questions from the candidates? All right, we'll go on then, and we will start with Mr. Cleveland. To open, please provide us with a brief summary of your personal history, your leadership record, and your own assessment of what defines a good state legislator.
Okay. My history, I've had 25 years in the Marine Corps, retired, taught school for about 8 years up in Maryland. My wife got posted to Rome, so I went as a dependent. And I got hired in Rome as an assistant security officer for the Department of Diplomatic Security, Department of State. My wife retired out of Rome. We came back to North Carolina, settled in '89, and I have got involved in local politics and worked my way up. And in 2004, got elected to the House District 14 seat, and I've been there ever since.
The latter part of that question was your assessment of what makes a good state legislator.
A good state legislature pays attention to what his constituents say, whether he agrees with them or not. He tries to help them in anything that he can help them with. He works with the leadership in getting things done that need to be done, and also works with leadership to stop things that shouldn't be done from happening. So there's a wide sphere of things the legislator has to be cognizant of and working towards to make sure that he does the job properly.
Okay, Mr. McLaughlin, you want me to repeat that, or?
No, I think I got it. I mean, I was told that we would have kind of an introductory 90 seconds, so a little scripted here. I want to represent you in Raleigh because the needs of Onslow County are great, and the folks in Raleigh, many of them have different priorities. Our county is unique, with the possible exception of Fort Bragg, Fayetteville. No other country contributes more to national defense than Onslow County. Therefore, the state and federal government have a solemn duty to make sure that our men and women can train for war, that when they deploy, their families have access to quality health care, good schools, and safe neighborhoods. The liberals in Raleigh have very different values. They seek to overturn the results of the last election, expand a culture of victimhood and entitlement. The left is fighting us tooth and nail, and to win this fight in Raleigh, I believe we need fresh legs. I'm a retired infantry officer. Since military retirement, I've helped thousands of families here in Onslow County as a certified financial planner, and I've been the fiduciary for over $100 million. My 3 children all attended White Oak High School and went on to state schools here in North Carolina. Yes, I do have a house divided. My wife, Cheryl, of 35 years, is a nurse, still gives patient care at Onslow Memorial. As a county commissioner, I was proud that the board that I served on kept Onslow County taxes towards the very bottom of property tax valuations. We were acknowledged by the State Teachers Association as the very best county for support of local education one year, and we always tried to support Camp Lejeune. Whether you're a registered Republican or an unaffiliated voter, I ask for your vote on 8 May. To learn more about our campaign, please visit joe4nc.com. That's joe4nc.com. Thank you.
Any answer to the assessment of what defines a good state legislator?
So, first and foremost, integrity. You have to be honest with yourself, honest to your people. You have to be a good listener. And never forget the duty position's title. It's representative. There are some folks who serve in different legislative groups, and they think that they're the conscience of the district. No, you're the representative of the district.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. McLaughlin, we'll start the next round of questions, or the next question with you, and you will have a minute and a half from now on as we go through these questions and the summation. So except for a minute for the rebuttal. Okay, students in Onslow County and across the country participated in protests and marches last month in light of the recent school shootings in Parkland, Florida. What is your takeaway from those events and other recent exchanges over school safety?
So the events in Florida were indeed very tragic, but immediately the left made it a issue of gun control and gun safety, which it was not, in my view, the primary issue. It was more a failure of several other systems, the mental health system, which allowed a person with multiple health issues to not get proper treatment. It was a failure of law enforcement. There's no reason that the first responders should have stayed outside the building. Clearly a breakdown in that response. As far as I know, that person owned a gun lawfully. Whether he should have been allowed to retain that gun, probably not, based upon what we've learned about his behavior since then. With regard to the student protests, my first thought was this looks an awful lot like the Pied Piper. All of a sudden, some nameless, shadowy groups on the internet using social media can somehow infect every school in the country and mobilize them to march to the streets. I think that's a little disturbing when folks outside of the schools can have such an impact. And I worry that in some cases, school boards, school superintendents may not have given proper leadership or guidance. Yes, you have a First Amendment right to protest, but whether that happens on school time and school ground, that's an entirely different matter.
Mr. Cleveland, in summary, the question is really, what's your takeaway from the recent student protests after the shootings in Florida and other recent exchanges that you've heard about the school safety?
Well, first of all, political correctness has allowed school shootings and other mass shootings to happen. 98.4% of mass shootings have happened in gun-free zones. Feels good, sounds good. Bad guys don't pay attention to laws or gun-free zones. People that are disturbed don't. The students, I think, were used unabashedly by groups that would love to see the Second Amendment go away. I think it was an opportunity for those that want to do away with the Second Amendment to leap out into the public and the background and push these students forward. Most of them, I don't believe, really understood what was going on or what they were doing. And if you look at the march that they had in Washington, from what I can gather, there were many more groups there than just students. So it became a political movement, not a student movement. And we can solve mass shootings if we take the proper steps and do what's necessary.
For my next question, I'd like to follow up on that subject of school safety just a bit and ask you specifically, what do you think you could do in your role as a legislator to harden our schools, to use a term that has been used quite a bit, and including your response, talk to me a little bit about your feelings on arming teachers and school staff.
First thing we should do is get rid of gun-free zones. As I said it earlier, nobody pays attention to them that don't want to pay attention to them. Only the good guys pay attention to laws. Arming teachers, arming individuals in the schools, if they are trained properly, if they are able to handle the training and get things done right, I have no problem with that at all. I think school access has to be restricted, and I believe it is right now in Onslow County anyway, where you go in one entrance and that's the only way you can get in. The idea of having a resource officer in the schools has been great, but it's time to arm them. It's time to make sure there is someone on site that can take action if needed if a shooter shows up.
Mr. McLaughlin?
The solution to this problem is not really what happens in the school. Of the teenage, school-age children deaths, very, very few, I think 3 or 4% happen in the school. Most of them happen in other places. So if you're truly concerned about violence happening to children, then the bigger problems lie elsewhere. But with regard to schools, you can make schools more protective to get into. You can have better security, but I'm not sure that putting more guns in the hand of untrained or poorly trained people is a solution. I would, as a first step that here we could do in Onslow County, the commissioners could conduct an evaluation amongst all the law enforcement agencies, the base PMO, anybody who carries a gun to work. How are they synchronized or not in the event of a response? What's our current level of training? And it takes time to ramp up budgets and harden schools and appropriate dollars. The state, I think, can help with some of that. They've already placed a big burden on class size reductions. Along with that, probably ought to be an appropriation for additional money to make schools more secure. But in my view, it's fundamentally a training problem. When people who should act more disciplined fail to act, doesn't matter how many more people like that you get, the answer will still be the same.
Okay. Going on to another topic, and Mr. McLaughlin, this is your question first here. What has caused the confusion, frustration, legal uncertainties surrounding the efforts to draw legislative and congressional district lines in North Carolina? And what can the state do to get a handle on that situation?
Well, first of all, the current legislative lines that are drawn are a vast improvement. The lines that have been drawn by the Republican legislature the last several years are a vast improvement over what we had, say, 20 years ago. It was not that long ago, Elliot, and you remember the days because you were at the paper, when Onslow was like a piñata. Every corner of the county belonged to some other legislator, and we had no one that we could really call our own. And through various efforts, and principally stemming from the legislature coming under Republican control, now we're getting closer to what's required in the North Carolina Constitution, that to the extent that you can, keep county lines intact. And with large degree, that's happened. So I'm not sure that the solution is a nonpartisan special master in California or wherever that person might be. I think that something that comes out of the legislature, a legislative process that North Carolinians can control. But they may not be currently perfect, but they're a lot better than they used to be. And any side that thinks they're at a disadvantage, I mean, we kind of rule and legislate by lawsuits. So whatever side isn't happy, they're going to take it to court. But they are a lot better than they used to be.
Mr. Cleveland?
Would you read the question?
Sure. What do you think has caused all the confusion, the frustration, the legal uncertainty surrounding the efforts to draw legislative and congressional district lines here in North Carolina? And how can the state get a better handle on that situation?
Well, the Democrat Party is the one that solved the confusion over it. They're the ones that took the state to court and sued because they didn't like the districts. We did nothing more than Democrats have been doing for 140 years here in North Carolina. We actually have a congressional district map that's the most compact in memory. I don't think there's ever been a better one drawn, and they still don't like it. We got accused of drawing racist districts. We did use race in drawing our state districts, and we had more black representatives in the House of Representatives than ever in the past. But they took us to court and sued us over it. So it's a political game, if I may say. If you don't like what's going on, take it to court, get a friendly judge, have it changed. And we're still fighting it.
Okay. Mr. Cleveland, for you, give us your assessment of North Carolina's economy, both its strengths and its weaknesses, and how does Onslow County reflect that assessment?
The state's economy is extremely fine. It's not been too many years ago when I would say the state of North Carolina was insolvent. Today, It is solvent, and we have about $1.8 billion in reserves. That's about a full month's operating costs. The business climate is in the top 10. We have a AAA bond rating. In the past 6 years, we've taken the state from a precarious position to a position of envy of the majority of the states in the country. I think we're in excellent condition. All the economists, the magazines that report on these things agree with us. Our tax climate has gone from 42 to 11, I believe. We're in the top 5 in most of the business rankings. We've done good things.
The economy of North Carolina is good and getting better, thanks to some of the legislation that a Republican-controlled legislature in Raleigh enacted with a Republican governor. Tax rates went down. Taxes matter. When businesses have a choice to locate or people have a choice to retire to, how much money they get to keep is a big deal. Our unemployment in Onslow County, I think, is in the 4% range. That's pretty good. That's close to what they traditionally call full employment. But the challenge for Onslow County, House District 14, is what do we do to expand our employment base? Yes, we're a company town. As long as there's a Camp Lejeune, we're going to be a company town. But not everybody can join the Marine Corps. What else can we do to expand our economy and attract good people to live here?
Okay. I'm going to ask a question that's been submitted by the audience today. And this, Mr. McLaughlin, you'll be first. Counties are currently being squeezed or constantly squeezed by unfunded mandates from both state and federal governments. The only county revenue streams are sales tax and property tax. Are there any additional revenue streams that you would consider to relieve property owners from property tax?
Well, there is maybe a third option, and that is federal remittances. You know, we get a little bit of money for our school systems from federal impact dollars, but again, Onslow County is a unique county. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no other county in the country that sends as many of their loved ones off to war and leaving families at home wondering if they're going to come back. And I think that deserves a disproportionate share of everybody's pot, whether it's the federal pot or the state pot. There is a special price that our citizens pay. We can't, we're limited on property tax, so if we had to find additional ways to find revenue, I would lean more towards a sales tax that maybe the federal or the state legislature could offer to local government entities, the county and the cities, to make the best taxing choice possible. But I will absolutely be discriminatory. This county stands second to none in what they do for the national defense, and I think they deserve extra attention.
Mr. Cleveland?
I believe the question was, how could they get additional revenue?
Yeah, primarily the question is this, is that can you identify additional revenue streams to consider that would relieve counties, property owners from these unfunded mandates or provide some relief as they're being squeezed by these unfunded mandates? Is there anything besides sales tax, property tax, or any changing in the balance of those two that you might recommend?
Well, the way the state is structured, sales tax and property tax, tourism taxes, that's about it for the counties. And unless the state law changes and gives the individuals, counties and municipalities and cities the authority to tax in different ways, I don't see anything coming forth. We did have a 0.5% sales tax here, increased 4 years ago or so, maybe a little longer. It was put on the ballot and folks approved it. And that's one way of getting increased taxes. But as far as coming up with another method of taxation, I don't believe there's actually any available.
Okay. With me on the timer today is Caitlin Diaz from the Chamber of Commerce. And if you ever do see the yellow light, you guys have been pretty good about keeping the time limits. That just means you got 10 seconds before you have to end your response. So we'll move on here, and I want to ask you this. This is a local question, and we'll start with Mr. Cleveland. What actions would you favor to stabilize the New River Inlet? And how should the responsibility for those actions be distributed among the various levels of government?
I'm not in favor of jetties and whatnot, but the legislature has given the authority for these to be built. North Topsail Inlet is looking into it. I believe they're doing a study now, or they have someone out there figuring out how much it's going to cost to build one. I believe tourism dollars are going towards that, and I believe there's some state money that's also going to go towards that. It'll be wonderful to get New River Inlet straightened out where it stay open. And I was actually surprised, about 9 years ago, the federal government, I was expecting them to come in and dredge it and maintain dredging for the Marine Corps. And I never have been able to find out what happened to that. But I think if North Topsail Beach keeps pursuing what they're doing and it comes up as a feasible alternative, we'll find the money to fund it.
Mr. McLaughlin, what's your feelings about stabilizing New River Inlet, and who should bear the responsibility for those actions?
So if we're going to lay claim to the world's largest amphibious training base, as well as an installation that has a Coast Guard training element in it, I mean, you've got to be able to get in and out to the ocean. And so I see it as fundamentally a federal government responsibility, augmented perhaps by the state and local governments, but this is one of those cases where, help get the federal government needs to pony up. Now, groins, the hardened structures, the jetties, as they're sometimes, that's a double-edged sword. I have family members up in a town called Cape May, New Jersey, where the Coast Guard has their basic training base, and they've got a groin that goes out to the Atlantic from the channel. That's about 1,000 feet long. On the north side of the groin, towards Atlantic City, that beach, it'd take you 5 minutes to walk to the beach, because it's 1,000 feet deep, because that's where the sand piles up. On the south side of the jetty, not so much, constantly eroding. So if you're, I'm not sure what the solution is. I'm not a beach hydrologist, but whatever it takes to keep the New River Inlet, whether it's frequent dredging or groins, whatever it is, the federal government needs to contribute a lion's share to that effort.
And we'll start this question with you, Mr. McLaughlin. In a recent speech, President Trump said he believes community colleges should convert to a more traditional role of vocational and technical schools, even suggesting that their names a name change might be appropriate. What are your thoughts about those ideas, and would you support changes in the way community colleges function?
So I think the answer to that lies in the name of the college, the community college. That's fundamentally a local issue that should be made with the stakeholders involved, the school system, the local governance. But sure, we marched down a road that said that you're not going to be all you can be unless you have a 4-year college degree in liberal arts. We've learned that's not the case. No nation will ever be great if they outsource all their manual jobs to immigrants from another country. There's that old joke about, I used to be a dentist before I gave up that job and became a construction worker. It was more paying. So I fully support community colleges focusing on skills that will help them get local jobs, but different communities have different needs, and I would say that's a discussion best left to local education and community leaders.
Mr. Cleveland, what do you think? I mean, again, President Trump recently said that community colleges should convert to a more traditional role of vocational and technical schools. He even suggested that perhaps there's some confusion about their name and maybe they need to change their name. What are your thoughts about those ideas, and what would you support, and how would you support changes in the way community colleges would function?
I think we have one of the better community college systems in the state, if not the best, in the states, if not the best. Our community colleges provide skill training, and they provide college-level courses. A student here in Onslow County can spend 2 years here and then transfer up to one of the universities. or he can actually get a degree here if he so desires. But at the same time, he can learn how to work on cars, diesels, he can do myriad of things, electrical. I think our system is what a community college should be. It should provide the community with education options for students that want to go. And I don't think we have to change it. I don't think we have to do anything with it. I frequently brag on our community college throughout the state. I think we have the best one in the state, and I think we're going to keep it that way.
Okay. Let me go on to my next question, which is concerns something that happened in the last couple of years in the General Assembly. It was one of the most controversial times for the legislature that I can remember, was the debate over the various elements of HB2, the so-called bathroom bill. Looking back on that, would you say this episode was worth it?
It was more than worth it. It needed to be done. The moral climate in our country is poor. And someone had to draw a line, and we did. And for anyone to say that HB2 hurt the state of North Carolina, we didn't see it. We had the greatest year in tourism the year after. Our money's increased, our businesses increased. The only thing we had was sports organizations and some others saying, we don't like you because you are not nice. Well, I don't think ladies should worry about a man coming in their bathroom. I don't think children should worry about anyone coming in their bathroom that shouldn't be there. I think we did what was right, and I would support it again. I fully supported it when it happened.
Mr. McLaughlin?
So let's remember what happened with HB2. The City Council of Charlotte implemented a law that would allow people to self-identify and have access to the shower facilities and bathroom of their choice. That was backed up by a federal government, a Dear Colleague letter from the federal government, which went to all the school systems across the country and said, yes, you will allow people to self-identify. And I don't know about you, Elliot. I've got two daughters, and that was the hill I would have died on to prevent someone from identifying as a young girl to go into a girl's shower. End of story. And so the legislature properly enacted a bill and signed by Governor McCrory to override Charlotte's misguided legal effort. However, then it became a political issue. And the governor, the now governor, then candidate, and his legislative allies refused to reach an accommodation, and shamefully, the ACC chancellors got involved and allowed the ACC sports venues to be affected. I think it's very unfortunate that the folks in academia would get into that political battle. So I agree with Mr. Cleveland that what the legislature did was appropriate. It became a political issue, and hopefully we won't have that kind of legal battle again anytime soon.
Okay. And this question is for you. You'll open it up, Mr. McLaughlin. The federal government has moved to open the waters off the coast of North Carolina to oil drilling and seismic blasting. How should the legislators respond to those plans?
I think the legislature and the governor should support further carbon exploration off the coast. The danger of a spill is very small. 10 years ago or so, we had the Gulf of Mexico oil blowout, and there was severe contamination for a period of time. But guess what? Does anybody not eat shrimp from Louisiana? I think the oyster roast down in Swansboro a couple of weeks ago had oysters from Swansboro. I didn't notice any particular difference. Offshore exploration needs to be expanded. To the extent that America can keep energy costs low, that helps every American. It helps us not become reliant on foreign sources of energy. So I'm all for it.
Mr. Cleveland, how do you feel about the proposals to open the coast of North Carolina to oil drilling and seismic blasting?
When we say coast of North Carolina, it gives the impression it's going to be on the coast looking at us in the face. That's not what's going to happen. It's going to be out far enough that you won't be able to see it from standing on a beach. everything I have read about seismic blasting and whatnot is not going to cause any harm to the marine life. There's nothing that I've run across outside of hyperbole that says it will. And it's something I think we need to do. We have to be basically independent of energy from other countries. And we're there now in actuality. We are energy independent if we would just use what we have. But we export oil, we export fuels. Building off, exploring off the coast to find out what's out there and to make sure we can continue our energy independence in the future is well worth the time and effort. So I'm all for it.
Okay, thank you. And we'll start with Mr. Cleveland on this one. Explain to me your general philosophy in dealing with so-called local bills, local legislation. For example, what direct role should governing bodies such as town councils, the school board, the county commissioners play in considering and preparing legislation that impacts them or their activities or things that fall under their purview?
What is my
What's your
perception?
position on that?
My position?
If there's something that affects the Board of Commissioners, should you go to the Board of Commissioners?
It depends on what I want to accomplish. You know, that the end, what I want to accomplish is going to decide whether I go to the Board of Commissioners or not. If the Board of Commissioners can come to me, City Council can come to me. I've had discussions with the city over some bills that weren't local actually, but affected them. I think if the legislator gets guidance from folks within his party or whatnot, they desire things to be moved along or done, and he's comfortable with it, I think he should go ahead and do it.
Mr. McLaughlin?
I think if it's a local bill that's going to change, for example, how a vacancy on the Onslow County Board of Commissioner gets filled, which I think what you're alluding to, I think dialogue between the legislators and the Commissioner Board is appropriate. Without full discussion of the pros and cons of a local bill, you risk not getting everyone on board, and it smacks of backroom smoke-filled negotiation. So yeah, if it's a big local bill, all the stakeholders should be involved, and let the merits of the argument play out. I think that the effort to allow the parties to pick the nominees for a vacancy on the Board of Commissioners is the correct way to go. This board is currently all Democrat, or I'm sorry, all Republican, right? And so do you really want Republican commissioners picking the Democrat for the board? Probably not.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. What role can a legislator have in guiding highway and other transportation improvement projects in the city and the county? And with that in mind, what do you see as the top transportation priorities in this area?
Do I go for that?
Yes.
So if I heard your question correctly, what role should a state legislature have on directing local road projects?
Yes.
That's probably not very much, because I don't think George or I aspires to have a bridge or a road named after us. I would say that that's a decision that should not be politicized. You know, there is a transportation list that gets developed with local input. Now, so the fighting for the funding of that absolutely should have the involvement of our elected representatives. Again, you know, thousands of Marines travel up and down Piney Green and Western Boulevard every day. They shouldn't fight an hour's worth of traffic to go practice how to fight. I believe that you go to some of these counties around the state, New Hanover, Durham County, they have state-of-the-art roads and not much oil splatter on the side. Doesn't look like they get used a heck of a lot. I think that we need major help in our infrastructure, including transportation, but try not to get too much involvement of electeds in terms of what and where and how. We don't have the skill set for that.
Mr. Cleveland, how do you feel about that? What role can a legislator play in guiding highway and other transportation improvements, both in the city and the county? And what do you see as the top transportation priorities in the area?
The way we've structured the transportation funding now, the local legislator has little to no input. He can talk, he can try to push and whatnot, but it's all done through the regional planning organizations and whatnot, and it's a much better system than it was. I was there when a legislator could get a road built in his district. And powerful legislators were having roads built, and I'm sure many of them are ones that Mr. McLaughlin mentioned in their districts that nobody used, or minimal use was done. And I will admit that I was able to get a few projects here in Onslow County done that I became aware of. So I benefited and my constituents benefited from that at that time. But the way it's structured right now, it has a defined process to go through, and we're getting more roads built and projects done now than in the history of the state.
Okay. Well, listen, I think I'm gonna have some good news for you guys. You both were a little skeptical when I told you before the meeting that we might go 90 minutes. You said I didn't have enough questions for 90 minutes. And I said, well, I probably do.
Keep going.
Been very efficient in answering the questions, so I probably can end this within about an hour, but I do have a few more questions for you as we keep going.
Poll the audience. We'll go for the bonus round.
Okay, Mr. Cleveland, there was a recent bill that was modifying the law on classroom sizes. And I'm just using this as an example, just to get your opinion about this whole issue. But that bill also included changes to the state elections board, and it covered the distribution of funds received for a gas pipeline. What do you see as the benefit or the problem of tacking on seemingly unrelated items to important legislation?
It's a way of getting things done. You're talking about HB 90. First of all, the lower class size is nothing new. Folks act like, oh God, this just happened. We've been funding lower class sizes for the past 2 budget cycles, and the LEAs are not doing what they should have been doing. So that's why we got in the pickle that we got in, and that's why HB 90 came about. The governor's slush fund had to be addressed. That was a convenient place to address it and make sure it went to something that the state would benefit from, particularly school systems along I-95 where the pipeline went. The other piece of legislation, the item in the bill, as I said, it's how you get business done.
Mr. McLaughlin?
I think to the extent that you don't load up an important bill that must be passed with Christmas tree items, you should try not to do that. I mean, you only have to look at the omnibus spending bill that the president had to sign. It had many things in there that he didn't like, but because it funded the military, he had to take the good with the bad. So I think it reinforces the public's disdain and contempt for a lot of what goes on in politics. So it might be a little bit more efficient to cram it all together, but it really doesn't help public insight or awareness.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk a little bit more about that bill now, specifically about that bill, not just the repercussions of it, but let's talk about the legislation to reduce classroom sizes. And of course, it's been modified somewhat to delay the financial impact on local units, but it can still prove expensive for Onslow and other counties, especially a county like ours that has a growing student population. Can or should the General Assembly provide any further relief to places like Onslow County? Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes, they should. As a county commissioner, we dealt with unfunded mandates all the time, especially with regard to Medicaid and Medicare. So yes, if the state is going to mandate a glide slope to smaller class sizes, they should provide some kind of revenue stream to do that. whether it's a local option sales tax, or better yet, find other efficiencies to remit more money to the local governments, whether it's lottery proceeds, or now that we've paid off the $2 billion unemployment liability pot that a prior administration left the state. You just can't keep cramming these unfunded mandates down on local government.
Mr. Cleveland?
The General Assembly funded lower class sizes. I already stated that. We've done it over the last 2 budget cycles. We have put a little over $1 billion into education in the last 5 years. We've raised teacher salaries. We got them at, I think the average now is about 50,000. Our goal over the next couple of years is to get them to 55. We're not ignoring education. When we took over the state, it was insolvent. We had to do a lot of things to make it solvent. And we're now at a point, and we've been at a point a couple of years back, where we're investing again in education, class sizes, pre-education, the whole area. And the General Assembly, I think, is doing more than a reasonable job to make sure that the education establishment is taken care of. We've just this past cycle, I believe, took care of the principal's pay. There was something else there, I can't remember off the top of my head. But we are not ignoring education, and we are putting money in it to help improve it and make it more efficient.
Okay, well, what could be the last question, unless you just both answered it with one word? But I'll start it with you, Mr. Cleveland. And then you'll have a chance to do your summations. We all know about the importance of legislative voting records, what you voted for, what you voted against. But we also hear about the importance of something we call influence within the House itself. How important is this influence, and how can one get it?
Influence in the House is mainly by experience and time. Now, I will say, no, I won't go there. Experience and time. I've been there 13 and a half years about. When I get up to speak in caucus, I have the courtesy of everyone paying attention and listening. I have changed minds. I've changed the speaker's mind more than once in caucus. I can go to the speaker anytime I want to, any legislator can. But with my background and my experience, I think I get a little more attention than a freshman legislator would. So it's a benefit having the time spent so that when you do need something done, or when something's going on that you really don't like, you are listened to, and you go in and you can be heard, and you have more than a 50% chance of getting things changed.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Well, if sheer longevity were the main criteria for legislative success, then we wouldn't have had the earlier question about what to do with the New River Inlet. I think influence in a political environment has a large measure to do with your personal skill sets. You know, do you have a gift for rubbing people the wrong way, or do you try to build consensus? For the last 24 years, I've made a career of helping people make painful decisions about their personal finances. So it's a blend of personal skills and then interacting with your peers up in the legislature. And I believe I have the skill set to do that.
Okay, well, we're going to start, and Mr. McLaughlin, we'll let you start with the summation, and then we'll go to Mr. Cleveland. You can pick right up after him.
Okay. Folks, thank you for joining us today. And I wanted to take a special point of privilege to commemorate this day. 50 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King was struck down by an assassin's bullet. All of us, well, some of us are not. Ms. Diaz are old enough to remember that day. But what a wonderful testimony to the strength of our nation. What a wonderful testimony it is to our community. Nothing like Onslow County. We're forged by bonds of brotherhood here, and I'm so proud to have served you, and I look forward to doing that again. This election is not about my opponent or the 14 years he's been in Raleigh. It's not about me. It's about you, the people, and how you will be defended in Raleigh. over the next several years? Will your representative have the energy and effectiveness to fight and win on your behalf? Or will he push fringe issues that have nothing in common with the major problems that we face? My service as an infantry officer, a county commissioner, and financial advisor provide me an excellent perspective to serve you in Raleigh. All across the country, the radical left are bent on overturning the presidential election and destroying President Trump. They are on the march. Just yesterday, one of their supporters went into YouTube and murdered several people. The radical left is determined to destroy traditional values. Send me to Raleigh and I will fight and win on your behalf. If you want to know more about our campaign, please visit joe4nc.com. That's joe4nc.com. Thank you so much.
Mr. Cleveland?
I've enjoyed my time in Raleigh, and I'm going to enjoy more time. I've done my job well, I believe. I have worked for my constituents, and I plan on continuing to work for them. I serve as the chairman on a budget committee, general government. I serve as the chairman on the military affairs and veterans committee. These committee assignments aren't given to freshman legislators. You work for them, you spend time, and you get the ability to chair a committee. When leadership thinks you are ready, that you'll get a committee. I also serve on the Military Affairs Commission, which was set up 3 years ago to promote the military in the state, to make sure it's a viable, everything in the state is viable for their training, no encroachment, et cetera. So I feel that I'm more than qualified, and unbeknownst to many, I'm still healthy. I'm able to walk around and do what has to be done, and I plan on continuing on doing my job.
Ms. McLaughlin, you had your rebuttal card up. You're finally using
Yeah,
one.
I
And I'll remind
did.
Mr. Cleveland that he's got one as well.
I did. So this issue of chairmanships and vice chairmanships, it's mostly bogus. This morning I looked at a committee for which Mr. Cleveland is a vice chairman. I think it was appropriations. You know how many vice chairmen there are for the appropriations committee? I lost count at 25. Even on the budget committee, there are 6 chairmen, 20-something vice chairman, and there's the Uber chairman, the senior chairman, Nelson Dollar. So don't read a whole lot into this or that title. At the end of the day, it boils down to what did you get passed and what did you bring back home? I'll fight for you in Raleigh. Give me a chance.
Okay. And we're going to end it with this rebuttal.
Obviously,
Because now we're getting close to our time
Mr. McLaughlin
frame.
doesn't understand
Okay.
how the budget committee works. The budget committee is one huge committee. The quote-unquote vice chairman of the budget committee are chairmen of separate committees that take care of different parts of the budget. So being a committee chairman is important. You control legislation. You control where money goes and how it's spent. So don't take lightly the idea that a vice chairman or a chairman of a committee is not powerful.
Okay. And thank you both for adhering to all the time limits, all the rules. Appreciate it very much. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Lorette Ligon, who is our president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Elliot, and George, Joe, thank y'all so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And very good information. Also, thank you to our corporate sponsor, Duke Energy, our media sponsor, the Daily News, and our partner, the City of Jacksonville. Now, if you missed any part of the Forum Onslow, just check the listings on G10 for the rebroadcast times and dates. And remember, your vote does count. Absentee ballots are now available, and if you wish to do the early one-stop voting, the dates, times, and locations are all available on the Onslow County Board of Elections website. Election Day is May 8th, 2018, 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., and you just vote at your local precinct. If you're not sure where your local precinct is, again, that information can be found on the Board of Elections website. On behalf of the Jacksonville Onslow Chamber of Commerce, thank you for joining us for the Meet the Candidates Forum.